Go ahead.
Strike! Three!
All right, Moneyballers, we have a very special interview today with a couple of guys that I hold in very high regard, Western New York umpires. We're going to do a little Q&A with some umpires. Everybody wants to talk about this call was bad, this call was great, this strikeout, blah, blah, blah. You know, these guys, we're going to get in their heads a little bit as to the calls they make, share a couple of stories. You know, any baseball fan will truly appreciate the umpire's perspective on things. So go ahead, Pete, and introduce yourself. And
Sure. Pete Leo. I was with Western New York Umpires Association for 31 years, presently retired, and I play golf a lot now.
Yeah, and I'm Norb Schmalfeld, currently the vice president of the Western New York Umpires Association, was president up until last year, and I've decided to slowly start to back away from those responsibilities. I've been with Western New York Umpires for a little over 40 years, and I am currently starting my 58th season as an umpire.
58th season. So, Pete, you said retired.
Yes.
No more umping for you.
No, it's kind of hard to keep up with the 15 and 16-year-olds that are running around the bases. So I can't keep up with them anymore. That's it. I decided that would be.
So I made sure Pete here was with us for the comic relief that we're all going to need throughout this video. I've known Pete for a long time. I hold Pete in very, very high regard. He's a legend. And not only, was he a very good ball player in his day at Canisius, but, he also, I knew he umpired for years. And I thought, you know what, when I met Norb the other day over at Eden, I said, it would be a really cool show, just getting a couple of these guys together and sharing some stories. And who better than from a couple of old timers, right? I wasn't going to bring, and what was really cool, as I was kind of talking to Norb a little bit, he had all these little umpires with him, right? You had your little soldiers with you. And were you doing a lesson there?
We were doing a clinic.
You were doing a clinic. Okay. So, I'm there coaching my son's 10U travel team, and Norb was there doing his clinic. And, the kids have a certain respect for you, right? Would you say that's fair? Is that fair to say? They have a respect for umpires. I guess that all changes when you get to a certain point when you start playing. But tell me about, take me back. Take me back, first of all, to how the game of baseball was. I'm going to start with Norb. How the game of baseball was coming up, the respect you had for umpires. Take me back as to when you were playing, before you were umping, and give me some feedback on what you thought of an umpire.
I didn't think much about umpires. In fact, I'll be very honest with you. I was one of those people in the bleachers or in the stands who was constantly berating the umpire. And this was my younger brother was playing too in Orchard Park in the Little League program there, and I would be standing outside the fence. And the umpires who were working the game at that time, I didn't think were very good, and I vocally let them know about it.
Okay.
Like a typical fan.
Sure.
And between innings, one of them came over and said, if you think you're so good or you think you can do better, why don't you become one of us? And that was my impetus.
Wow.
That spring, I went through the training program and became an umpire.
That's an excellent story. He called you out and you said, okay, yeah.
I said, let's do it. And it totally changed my perspective.
Pete, what was your genesis of becoming an umpire?
I played a lot of baseball, as I knew. I ended up in AAA Muni, and those were the Western New York umpires. And I really never argued with an umpire because I thought I'd get thrown out of the game. That was the problem with that. And after I retired, a gentleman that was Rob Woodick, who's one of our passed away, but one of our umpires that coached me, said, Pete, you'd be a great umpire. So I says, really? I says, yeah, you make this much money. I said, all right. So I went to the meeting. And I remember going to the meeting, they were reading the rules of baseball and softball. And I was like, oh my God. And I went home and told my wife, give me a double vodka and tonic, hold the tonic. She goes, why? I don't know any of the rules.
Hold the tonic. Yeah.
And, Mr. Woodick talked to me and he says, no, once you get into it, you'll know better, more than anybody out on the fields. We went from there, and then I had, 31 years with them.
Okay. Now let's talk about those rules. I'm going to bounce back to Norb here. The rules of baseball, the basics are the basics, right? We could sit all day. There's opinions on the gameplay, the speed. I'm a big fan of the new style of baseball, as where you may not be. Traditionalists, there's some issues. Everybody has a different opinion on it. The runner at second base, I could do without, but there's all different parts of it. I think that a traditional baseball fan, might critique, like some of it, hate some of it, whatever. Over the years, in 58 years of umpiring, how easy is it to transition or catch up to the game of baseball at the speed it's at now?
It isn't that difficult. Rules haven't really had any radical changes. At the professional level, you've now got the clocks and the pitch clocks and batting clocks and so on. And that has actually helped the game because the games were getting too long. And some of the quirky pre-game or pre-at-bat stuff where between every pitch would take a minute and a half to adjust his clothing and all this other kind of stuff.
You're absolutely right. Yeah.
And it just delayed the game.
Right.
Games were going 3 hours plus. The reality is that a good 7-inning game, when we're talking amateur ball, should be 2 hours, 2:15 max.
Yep. Well, and that's why they generally do have a 2-hour clock on them. A 7-inning game is usually a 2-hour clock on it. It should fall in that 2 to maybe 2:15. Always give a little bit of a window, right? You never want to rush a game.
No.
And I'm sure you would agree with that.
The only thing that from an amateur perspective and what we try to do is we try to encourage coaches to get their players to hustle in, hustle out.
Correct.
There's nothing worse than seeing kids walking out to the diamond, walking into the dugout from the diamond. You lose a lot of time. And the game isn't meant to have down periods aside weather conditions. Weather will certainly slow a game down or cause a game to stop due to conditions. But if you've got a bright sunny day and a beautiful day to play the game and the kids aren't hustling, first of all, if you're on a time limit, you're losing playing time. And if it gets late in the game and you're in the 6th inning, you're down by a run or you're ahead by a run, you want to be able to finish that game and get it in. And kids don't realize that walking doesn't help the process. And coaches need to be on their players to focus on that. So as umpires, we always tell the kids, hustle in, hustle out, let's go.
For someone like me who's such a baseball enthusiast, you might as well be a preacher, listening to you. I'd be, up watching you on the altar here. It's so biblical to me to hear an umpire tell a story that way of the hustle in, hustle out, and just the way that it should be played. It's difficult sometimes. I've been coaching for years, my own children included, and little things will drive me crazy, right? They'll throw the bat into the other dugout when you get a base on balls, right? Sure. Be aware, throw that bat, toss your bat, don't throw your bat, toss your bat backward and hustle down the base path. Pete, I'm going to go back to you. Watching baseball, right? A kid, a 12-year-old, take a base on balls and walking or jogging down to first base. What goes through your mind as soon as you see that?
Well, I don't like that either. To me, the excitement of the game should make you walk. Okay, be excited.
Yes.
Run down to first base. Get ready to steal second.
Yes.
You've got to instill that in a young player, and he's got to live with it. I played that way all my life, and that's what's got to be going. Like Norb says, get them off the field.
We've lost that though, haven't we? Do you feel, both of you collaboratively? Yeah. Do we feel we've lost that a little bit?
I watch my little grandson play Little League. And I'm biting myself.
Yeah.
There's all these things that I'd like to show them, but I can't because I'm not the coach.
Thank you.
And the coaches that are out there, God bless them, they spend a lot of time, but
they don't know what they're doing.
No. And then, so I take my grandson at home and say, why don't you put this foot here, put this is what, it's got to play that way. And then he goes out and does it the next time. But you're right. It's got to be a excitement. If they're not excited playing baseball, go play chess or something.
What's your take on that, Norb?
I kind of agree with Peter on that.
Kind of. It sounds like you hesitantly agree.
The point that I see is especially at the youth groups, I see a lot of volunteer coaches, parental coaches who don't know the game.
Thank you.
Thank you. And they don't teach the fundamentals of the game. And the fundamentals are so key, especially at the young age groups. I coached for years at all different levels. And the thing that we strived for was to execute the basic fundamentals of the game. Footwork, how to receive if a ground ball is hit to you, there's a right way and a wrong way to receive a ground ball.
Yep.
There's a right way and a wrong way to throw the ball. There's a right way and a wrong way to how to hold a bat. The basics of how to bunt. The art of bunting has disappeared.
I got a good one on that.
And most of it is now because you see major leaguers who are constantly trying to hammer the ball, the long ball, and the small ball game, as they call it, is disappeared. But
it's funny, you saying this, and I don't mean to interrupt you, but we were down in that same game that I'm referencing. I think it was, we had an inning left, and I walked over to my bench and I said, guys, it's time to play some small ball. And, these kids, these 10-year-olds looked at me like I was a Martian, right? What's small ball? And I literally had to explain to them, these kids aren't going to be hitting home runs, and they need to learn the fundamentals of baseball. I think, listen, chicks dig the long ball, right? Like that, the home run is a sexy thing. It's never going away. At a professional level, that's fine. Leave it exactly as it is. I'm fine with where it is. But I totally agree with you from these kids, coming up from age 8, once they're done with T-ball, moving into learning how to play baseball, they need to be taught a certain way, and they need to be taught the fundamentals, right? And, I'm really glad you brought that up. Bunting's become almost obsolete, right? And every kid, I know you're chomping at the bit here. Every kid wants to come up and they want to emulate their favorite play, right? So they want to come up and they want to get, and if you tell them as a coach, hey, I have something. I say, when they go up to the plate, there's two things, right? I say, dig in. Dig in means you're swinging freely. Get your leg to the back of the box, and then if it's 2-strike count, whatever, you'll hear me contact, choke up, make sure you make bat to ball contact. That's it. That's all I'm asking you. Go out swinging, right? That's my thing as a coach. You need to go out swinging. Contact on 2 strikes, dig in means swing freely. These kids will ignore me, right? So I'm the coach, and this is where we're going to get back to that respect thing. It's got to be difficult for guys like you, not only as umpires, but just veterans of the game, to see. I know you're chomping for that bunt story, so let's hear it.
Okay. My daughter, Natalie, and Norb knows who she is, played Little League for Orchard Park, and went to 13, 14. She was moving up, and I volunteered to be a coach because I couldn't stand it anymore, and I took over the team, and there were 2 young ladies that had the team. And I said, you guys are in charge of the cookie drive and this and here. I'm going to coach this team. And the first thing I do is go to the girls. This is softball. You got to bunt. None of them knew how to bunt.
They didn't know how.
No. So we took, an hour or so. All I did was show them how to bunt. The game came up. Believe it or not, I had signals. So I gave them the bunt signal, all 9 of them. Well, the other team didn't even know how to feel that. So we just went around the bases like crazy, just doing bunting. So then all of a sudden, all these parents were coming to me and said, hey, can you get my daughter on your team next year?
They loved it.
Yeah, because they saw.
You were then known as the bunting coach.
Well, I did a lot of things with them. I used to ask them how many outs, and every position had to go like this and point to where they're going to throw the ball.
That's still a big thing. I do that. Yep.
People, they don't know where to sit. And I had that ingrained in them. If they didn't know, they would go like this, and I would point.
How about calling the ball?
Oh, wow.
Yell out, man. Make my kids as loud as you can. And I don't care if you're by yourself on an island.
Yes.
I want to hear you, right?
Yes, absolutely. Good
and then in an actual game, and they all do it in practice in an actual game, as soon as it's gameplay, you can hear a teardrop.
Yeah, right.
Call the ball, right?
Sure.
Yep.
But let's get back to why we're here. And that is a funny story, Pete, and I love it. And I know, again, you are a savant of the game, man. And I really do respect,
Can I throw a story in that's
Of course.
similar to his?
Of course. Yeah, that's why we're here.
I was coaching the Orchard Park Quad County team, which is essentially 18U baseball. Okay. We had a game against a team from Clarence, and Clarence had a stud pitcher. He was Division I, ECIC All-Star, almost unhittable.
Okay. When was this?
This has got to be maybe 15 years ago.
Okay.
He had an ERA that was under 1. He was just an unhittable. He was a tremendous thrower. We came into the game and I had a team meeting huddle before the game started. And I said, everybody that gets up automatically bunt. No sign, just drop a bunt. Whatever pitch you pick out, just do it. And we're going to keep on bunting until they get the first out. We had 5 consecutive bunts and scored 2 unearned runs because they threw the ball around. Yeah. We ended up winning the game 2-1.
On this kid with the under 1 ERA, because you knew going in that's the way you were going to beat this guy.
It's the only way we could beat him because we couldn't challenge his fastball. We couldn't challenge his curve.
Correct.
He was that good.
Correct. Now it's a phenomenal story.
Look at professional ball. A few years ago when they allowed the infield shift.
Yeah.
And you could have a left-handed batter. You'd have the shortstop playing on the second baseman position, the second baseman playing shallow right field. And the third baseman was playing where the shortstop normally does.
Right.
A simple bunt down the third base side was guaranteed base hits.
You're absolutely right. Let me ask you this as umpires. I had Pat Vendetti on the show, okay, about a month ago. Pat Vendetti, if you're unfamiliar with the name, he pitched as well righty as he did lefty. So he'd be up at, there's only one guy, he's the only switch pitcher in MLB history. He came out, he pitched with the A's. He pitched with a few other teams. The episode I'll show you later. It's phenomenal. But the umpires then came out with a rule. It's called the Pat Vendetti rule. And it is that he needs to declare which side he's pitching on. What do you guys think of that rule in particular? I didn't like the rule.
I agree with you on that.
Good.
I think that if you have a player who has a unique talent, you need to utilize that talent to the best of your abilities. But what was happening in his case, you have a switch pitcher going up against a switch hitter. So now he's lining up to be throw right-handed, so the batter goes to the left-handed box, and now he switches hands, goes to the left-handed throw, and then the batter switched back over.
So let's get back to umpiring, and I'm going to bounce back to Norb here. So over the years, and I kind of started with the how you got into it and the genesis and everything else, and your respect you had for umpires, and then we just spun in a different direction, which is the validity of the show. That's what the authenticity of the show, and that's what I like doing. But take me back to you maybe being a 15-year-old ball player. Okay, a strike three is called on you. All right, you don't like it. You're saying there's no way that thing was a strike, or that was high, that was low. There's no way. I don't care if you were umpiring or not. What was your reaction as a ball player?
As a ball player, if I thought the pitch wasn't a strike, I would tell the umpire walking away, you missed that one.
Okay.
That's simple. If you back in that time, if you said anything beyond that, it was usually a heave-ho.
Okay.
Or some type of a confrontation. And in a confrontation, the umpire always wins.
Of course.
So I knew well enough that if I wanted to stay in the game, I could at least say something and walk away.
Part B to that question, that was kind of the unspoken rule, right? You could say that to him and get away with it, right? And then he might think for a minute, and then it was on to the next one, okay? Now, my second part of that question is today, right, when you're umpiring, what are you hearing if somebody walks away, they don't like the strike?
I had a game yesterday, a varsity game, and I had a player who I called out on the strike three curveball, and he said that almost hit me. I said, it broke right over the middle of the plate. He says, you got to follow it a little bit better. And that was the extent of it.
Really? So he was respectful.
You don't get a lot of it that much anymore.
Okay.
Occasionally you do. And my comeback is, excuse me.
Yeah. Making sure that you're in control and not him.
Absolutely. And then if he comes back and repeats it, now we have an issue that we deal with. But I also want him to understand that I heard it. It's unacceptable. And you need to have a little bit of respect for the job that I'm doing or trying to do.
That's fair. Pete, same exact question, A and B.
Well, first of all, I might challenge it. I'm not challenge the umpire, but I might say
it's happened. A third strike. Yeah.
Third strike. Geez, that was a little high.
Okay. Yeah.
And I'd walk away.
Okay.
That'd be it. So at least I knew the difference of a high pitch and a low pitch.
Now, are you mumbling that, walking away? Are you looking him in the eye and telling him and then walking away?
Looking him in the eye, because I think you're challenging him. It's more of I'm walking away. Hey, Norb, that was a little high.
Okay.
Mr. Umpire, sir, blue, that was a little high. And I get, so next time he comes up, he knows that that's not my strike zone. And, that's it. You get a lot of that also. Should I go to umpire or batter? What do you want me to do here?
Oh, your exact same question as Norb. So when you were a batter, you played Canisius and Muni, a call, like, if you didn't like the call, how you would react. So you answered that. And then I guess umpiring, something that you'd hear a typical response from a male or female.
You would hear that, I thought that was outside or something. If they said it like that, I would just say, well, I thought it hit the corner.
Okay.
And that was the end of the conversation.
Okay.
It wasn't a challenge. If a coach came out to me and said, hey, I'd like you to take a little closer look, that girl could, thought that was inside, fine, I'll do that. I'll watch the next time.
What's the wildest interaction you ever had on a call? So say, where let's say something, it's bottom of the ninth, whatever it is. Yeah, just that's why we're here talking.
It was a coach in a 15-16 league, summer league, that actually came out of the dugout with a bat. And
really,
so that was the first coach that got thrown out of the game. He came out.
And it was your job to throw him out.
Yeah, he was, he's a coach in the Little League, 15-16. And he comes out, he had said a couple of words. I heard him. We hear him. We try to act like we're deaf, but we hear the people talk. And he grabbed the bat and he says, oh, really? And then like four of the parents tackled him, and I said, well, yeah, you're gone. It was in Hamburg.
Really? Wow.
And we reported him so he could, the commissioner came over, threw him out of the league and everything.
I hope he's not coaching, because that's the last thing, me as a coach and a parent, that guy shouldn't be involved with baseball.
I mean, I would even take it to the next, if I was umping and the ball hit the corner, and I would maybe whisper to the, that's on the corner.
Yep.
Letting them know that, it's outside, but it's on the corner.
Yep.
So that next time they would, know they had a shot at it.
Nor, how much of that do you think an umpire should do? How much, I guess tutorial or not coaching is the wrong word, right? But if the kid's not swinging at a ball, you see him, say he comes up 4 times in a game, or say you do a tournament, he comes up 10 times in a weekend, and he's taking that same pitch over and over again. How much do you think an umpire should say, or how much would you say?
I don't say anything to the player,
Okay,
unless the player comes back and says something to me
Okay.
to initiate it.
okay,
At which point then I'll come back and say, hey, that pitch has been called all weekend long. You have to adjust to that call.
Yeah. I like it.
And very often it's players just don't adjust. They have their perception of what the strike zone is, and the umpire's perception could very well be much different. Every umpire has their own perception of where the zone is.
What is the wildest story, like I asked Pete, of a strike or a ball that something was missed? You know, he had the guy come out with the bat. What's something that happened to you?
I haven't had anybody come out with the bat. There's been some verbal stuff that became personal, at which point you would have to throw the player out. But anytime they address something that becomes you and then followed by an adjective or something else, that usually leads to an ejection.
What's your tolerance level?
I'm very tolerant.
Okay. How about you, Pete?
Yeah, I think I am too, except for, like you said, if one word comes out of their mouth, that's the end of it.
You have your word, right? That's your agitator.
I'll let them, if they say, you know, I thought she slid in the second, I thought she had the bag. And I say, well, you know, I was about 3 feet away from it. I saw it real clear. The tag was made. You know, that's it. You're entitled to your opinion, though, and you know that's it. So try to explain.
Conversations with players.
It's good to keep the coaches happy too. You know?
Conversations with players should be ongoing all the time.
Yeah,
you always want to be able to talk to the players, and because they need to understand that you are human. You are not a machine back there. And I'm working the plate. I always start a rapport with both catchers from both teams to introduce myself, to have them, give them an understanding as to where I am, what I'm doing. I may ask them through the course of a game, hey, if I call this pitch that way, I'm going to ask you, did you see it the same way? And I said, just be honest with me, because if my crosshairs aren't sharp that day, I need to know that so I can try to sharpen those crosshairs.
You're a very honest and transparent person. I can tell, you know, by the way you speak, and I'm sure that's a reflection of your umping. Speaking of, you had a great segue by saying we're not machines back there. Okay, you know where I'm going. I mean, everything is going into machines, and I watch enough high A, single A, high A, double A, and triple A baseball. That's where the experiments start. Okay. That's where, you know, you're going to have the machines. They're going to start there before it goes to the major league level. How much of a necessity do you think a real live body back there is to baseball?
I think the live body behind the plate is
paramount,
definitely needed.
Yeah,
absolutely. And umpiring has been a part of the game forever.
Yeah.
And you are going to have umpires who are going to miss calls.
Right.
A fact that many people don't realize, last year in Major League Baseball, of all of the video replays that they've had, 68% of those calls were overturned. What's that tell you about the professional umpire? They miss 68% of the calls out there on the bases, because that's where the replays are handled. You talk about an amateur umpire now who's working a little league game or a high school game. If they're not missing 2/3 of the calls, will they miss calls? Absolutely, they're going to miss calls. The pros miss the calls. It's a part of the game.
You're saying 68% were overturned.
Yes.
Last year.
Yes.
That's wild. That's wild.
2/3.
A good umpire has the humility to know he's missed a call. A bad umpire lets his ego get in the way, and there's no way he'll back down on a call. Do you think that's a fair statement?
Absolutely.
Pete?
Yeah, you know, when you've got to try it once. I always tell people until, and again, I did more softball, hardball, but the girls are throwing it 90 miles an hour for that small amount there. Until you've been there and see it and see the ball move at the last second, it's very hard to figure that out. As far as the bang plays, man, sometimes they're like second base. There's dust flying. People are running. Here comes the ball. You tell me you're not going to miss one of those? Sure, you're going to miss one. You're human. Yeah. But you're doing the best you can. You're trying to get in position and make that call. And I like the replay as far as that, even though years ago I used to tell my family the umpire is always right. Then they came out with a replay.
Yeah.
But
well, it's still listen. I don't mean to interrupt you, but they should still be coached and taught that the umpire is always right. I wouldn't change that today.
Correct.
With my kids, the way I coach them, the umpire is always right. And you know what? If there's a replay, let them figure it out that way. But it's not up to the kid or the parent to try to say, okay, you know what I mean? So I would still say coach them the same way
Mhm.
as far as the umpire is always right, and then let the rules of the game take over from that perspective. Does that make sense?
There's a lot of conversation about, respect the umpire, and coaches and parents always try to teach respect the umpire. But conversely, the umpire has to earn that respect as well by the way he works on a diamond.
I love it.
And you can be a bad umpire and have a bad attitude, and there's no way anybody's going to ever respect you. But if you can be humble if you blew a call, and if you can understand that you blew a call and try to do better or make a correction, not that you can correct the call, so to speak, unless it's a interpretation of a rule, those can be corrected. But a judgment type of call, you blow it, but at least don't have an attitude about it if somebody comes and questions you about it.
No, I love it. Listen, that's every episode. I have a tagline. I'll take a 1 minute of something that was said during the interview, and that'll be my highlight. You're both salt of the earth gentlemen to the core, but definitely, a difference in personality. And if I didn't know Pete as well as I know him, okay, I would, because the next question is, who is your favorite player of all time? Who is your favorite player of all time? Who was your favorite player of all time? I already know the answer with Pete.
I do have a Nolan Ryan autographed baseball.
Okay.
But I'll be very honest with you. I'm a fan of the game, not of the individuals.
Okay. So you don't have a favorite player?
I don't have a favorite player. I respect the players that you mentioned. They were tremendous ball players. I had the honor of meeting Nolan Ryan and getting an autographed baseball from him, which I cherish to this day. But I'm a lover of the game. People ask me, what's your favorite team? I say, I don't have a favorite team. I enjoy watching the game.
That's so respected by me, to have a passion for the game, isn't it, Pete?
Yeah.
Like to have a passion for the game that you don't even have to pick a favorite team. And
I grew up a Yankee fan, and my father was
this guy, just so
catcher.
people don't know, I was at his wedding. Okay,
Yes.
I was at his wedding, his sixth wedding, or his third. Diana liked that one, and it was a Yankees themed wedding, and it was phenomenal, man. And one of the biggest diehard Yankee fans I know.
We walked up to had my two daughters walking me up, and all three of us had Yankee uniforms. I had Matty Lee, Girardi, and Yogi Berra, and they walked me up to the.
It was really cool, and Yogi Berra, I know he's near and dear to you.
Yes, he is. Yes.
Did you ever get a chance to meet him?
I did meet him and shake his hand once in Toronto. I got his autograph. I was like a little kid. I bumped into him in a restaurant, but I never, told you a million times. I had a customer of mine whose son ran the A or AA stadium right behind the museum. So I went there and tried to meet Yogi. And unfortunately, on that day, Yogi left to go see Phil Rizzuto at the hospital because he wasn't doing well. This
has been great, guys. I really appreciate you guys giving me your time. Phenomenal interview. I really hope you enjoyed it. This was phenomenal. I thank you both, for your time. And you guys but I hope for generations to come, we're going to have these type of baseball fans and just, guys like you who love the game and continue to pass that along, from generation to generation. Last thing, if somebody wants to become an umpire, where do they go? What do they do? How do they sign up?
www.wnyua.org. That is the homepage for our association. On the homepage, there is a tab that says, do you want to become an umpire or become an umpire? You just click on that. It opens up a window. You can fill out an application. We will follow up with that individual and get them started.
That's a wrap. You guys crushed it. Great job.